Vladimir Putin vowing that Russia will firmly defend its national interest amid an escalation of tensions with the West over Ukraine and the imprisonment of Alexei Navalny. It comes as the European Union prepares to hold a major summit on EU-Russia relations at the end of May. Lucy Hoff has more from Brussels.
There have been commemorations in both Russia and the West to mark the 76th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, but those commemorations have marked the extent to which tensions have risen between Moscow and the US and the European Union. President Putin used his address on Victory Day over the weekend to warn that Russia was fully prepared to firmly defend its national interest to ensure the safety of its people, insisting that Russia defends international law. That is not a view shared here in Brussels, particularly in light of rising tensions between Russia and the Czech Republic over a bomb attack back in 2014, which Prague believes Russian agents were responsible for. EU top diplomat Josep Borrell said that the European Union stood in solidarity with Prague in the face of Russian aggression.
We once again express our solidarity with the Czech Republic and Bulgaria in light of the recent events related to Russia. I have to repeat again that the pattern of negative actions by the Russian government continues and it fits the dynamic of escalation.
President Putin's comments about defending Russia's national interests comes in the wake of a fresh round of sanctions against Moscow imposed by the US and the European Union over the treatment of Putin critic Alexei Navalny, alleged cyber attacks and hacking, as well as Russian activity at the Ukrainian border following the biggest build-up of troops since the 2015 annexation of Crimea. There's also been the expulsion of a number of Russian diplomats from European nations amidst a number of issues and allegations of spying activities in Europe. Meanwhile, given that there has been a renewed transatlantic alliance between the EU and the United States, there are attempts to move the dialogue with Russia forward. Russia on Tuesday said that it had extended an invitation to the Biden administration for an in-person summit between Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden to discuss the number of issues facing the two capitals, but that Washington was yet to accept the offer. Lucy Hoff, SABC News, Brussels.
Okay, so just to reiterate that the US President Joe Biden is expected to meet President Putin on the sidelines of the G7 summit in London next month to discuss the tensions between the two countries. For reaction from Washington, we're joined now by SABC News correspondent Kate Fisher. So, Kate, there has been a build-up of tensions between the two countries. We'll talk about what the backdrop of this is first. But the latest news out of the White House about this proposed meeting, as Lucy Hoff was saying, that the Russians say there's no word from the Biden administration whether or not it is going to take that meeting or invitation of a bilateral. What is the latest?
Well, in fact, Joe Biden was asked about Russia, and in particular this, we've just had a major cyber attack on an oil pipeline here in the US, which has been, we're told, was undertaken by a Russian hacking group, a ransomware group called DarkSide. Okay, they don't believe working for the Russian government, but they're based in Russia. And Joe Biden was asked about them yesterday, and he said that he would be meeting with Vladimir Putin, and he would indeed be raising this issue of cybersecurity and cyber attacks emanating from the Russian Federation when he met the Russian leader. So that is certainly a stronger indication that the White House is intending this meeting to go ahead. I understand that one of the sticking points at the moment is trying to find a suitable location for the meeting. They want it to be in a third country, and so looking to find somewhere that isn't at risk of invasion from Russia, is still on good terms with America following Donald Trump's time in office when he was much more isolationist and perhaps sometimes offensive to other countries. So that's they're currently looking for a location, but it does seem certainly from the White House that they intend that meeting to go ahead.
Okay. So this happens against the backdrop of, as we mentioned, the tensions over the Ukraine. There's been a build-up of troops since March at the border of Russia to the Ukraine, especially amidst the US and European Union partnership, so to speak, on this issue. What is likely to be raised and what direction could these talks take on this particular issue?
Well, it's what we know from what Joe Biden has said is that he wants to be tough on Russia, much tougher than his predecessor was, but he does not want to escalate tensions so that they lead to some kind of conflict. He's very aware of keeping that balance. So you may remember that in an interview he did here in the US, he described Vladimir Putin as a killer, so very strong language. Yet when it came to punishing Russia over the solar winds cyber attack, election meddling, the way that Putin has treated the protesters who are protesting for Alexei Navalny, his opponent, he just introduced sanctions which were widely seen to be fairly moderate in nature. His argument for that being that he does not want to escalate things. He wants to make sure Russia knows that he's not happy, but he doesn't want to make things worse. So when it comes to what's happening in Ukraine, I imagine it will be a similar thing, pointing out to Vladimir Putin that this is not what the rest of the world wants to see, although Vladimir Putin, for his part, has made it clear that that is one area that he is not willing to budge on. We understand that there will be other topics on the agenda that perhaps the two leaders could find more common ground, things like nuclear weapons, strategic security issues, and so on.
And just to follow up on that, Kate, do you think the impression, though, from the Russian side is that though Joe Biden's words may be harsh, that his actual policies have been more moderate and can create space for, fertile ground to correct some of these quote-unquote misunderstandings?
Yeah, I think we need to remember that Joe Biden has been around in the geopolitical sphere for a very long time, as has Vladimir Putin, and they know each other. They have had meetings and summits before, albeit in different roles when it comes to Joe Biden, and they understand the pragmatism of the relationship. And Joe Biden does not want to see any kind of major conflict with Russia, but he does know that he needs them on side for things like climate change, one of his big priorities here. He needs them if there's any chance of getting the Iran nuclear deal back off the ground. He needs them in his dealings with North Korea, with what's happening in Afghanistan. He wants to keep them on side and get their cooperation on many of these issues. So when it comes to criticising Vladimir Putin about the things that America is less pleased about, he is so far at least taking a much more moderate stance on that, knowing that he does need his cooperation on many of these other big issues that he has on his foreign policy plate.
Well, thanks a lot, Kate. My colleague out there in Washington, D.C., Kate Fisher, SABC correspondent.